All right, so I want to be honest with everybody today about my upbringing and how I had to get rid of a lot of bad ideas that church leaders tried to spoon feed me with. So, yes, I was born into a very religious household and I was homeschooled, and I was taught one viewpoint of things, and I was living that fishbowl lifestyle. But one of the most harmful things that I was taught was that it is wrong to have a female's body. So, yes, I was born female, assigned female at birth, and the older I got, the more it seemed like the religious community had a problem with the fact that I had a female body. And so I'm not over exaggerating when I say that I was taught that it's wrong and sinful to have a female's body. There's this woman, she wrote a book about it. Okay, Linda K. Klein. She wrote a book, and she went through some of the things that I went through. Her church had a problem with her as she began to develop. Now, when she was a little girl and when she was not fully developed, when she was flat-chested, her church was okay with her. But when she got older and she got some breasts and some thighs and some hips, and she began to develop a very nice womanly shape, the church had a problem with her. And not just her church, but many of the evangelical Christians at that time had a problem with women having nice bodies. So one of the titles of her book, I'm going to read this because it's what I lived through. The title of her book is called Pure, and it says, "Inside the evangelical movement that shamed a generation of young women and how I broke free." Linda K. Klein wrote this book, and good book to read. This is something that I've experienced. I was a part of evangelical Christianity back then. And yeah, so then this other book I read when I was a teenager that messed up a lot of people within my age group was Joshua Harris' book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Now, I have to be fair, Joshua Harris, he doesn't believe these things anymore. So that's good because there's a lot of harmful things in this book. But back in 1994, I was taught that this stuff was good, and I did believe this stuff back when I was, a 12-year-old kid, 12, 13, 14. I did believe in this stuff. And the strange thing about this book is that the church that I went to did agree and approve of this, and I had a parent who was excited that Joshua Harris wrote this book, and she wanted to enforce these crazy things in his book. So yeah, there's on page 144, he writes about how God has a problem with heterosexual people and homosexual people. So if God has a problem with both, then God has a problem with all sexuality. So if you read this book back when you were a teenager, how a lot of people felt when they were done reading this book, they felt like it was wrong to be sexual, it was wrong to have sexual thoughts, and God hates sexuality, and you're letting God down when you have sexual feelings and when you want to be in a romantic relationship. This book says nothing about consent, and it doesn't say anything about our biological urges. So just a lot of silly things in this book. And he talks about how girls have the responsibility to control how a man thinks. So that's on page 99. And he says we are responsible for guarding our brother's eyes. So which means that we have to wear modest clothes so that we don't help guys to deal with their struggles with bodily lust. So that was just a huge problem back then. So that was a heavy responsibility that no girl had to deal with. But Joshua Harris' book was full of bad ideas. I'm glad he renounced it. He's not copying any of these books. Now, I have a copy of this book because it did affect a lot of my thinking when I was a teenager. By the time I turned 15, I realized that this was a lot of bullshit. So I had to wait until I was 15 to realize that that was a lot of hot mess. So, yeah, so the title of my little show today is, the title is My Religion Tried to Shame Me for Having a Female Body. Yes, that is what my religion did. It tried to shame me for having a female body. So at first I was fine with the modesty culture, you know, how most of us females start off. We're just little kids, real little. We don't have the big hips yet. We don't have the breasts yet. We don't have the fluffy butt yet. So I'm just a little kid, and I'm just, you know, moving along with life and taking one day at a time, just being a kid. And so I was fine with modesty culture when I was a kid, you know, when I was little. But when I got older, and once I realized that the pastor had anger in his voice when he talked about women's legs and women showing off their shoulders, and a pastor would get angry about women's bodies, and he would say, well, they got to cover up. They got to cover up. And so when I was a kid, I agreed with the covering part, but I was confused by the anger. Like, what's so angry about? Why is the fact that a woman have breasts, why is that causing that pastor to be angry? Why is that pastor angry at the fact that women have legs? Why is that causing anger? And so that confused me, because I was a little girl, but I was on my way to being a woman, and all this anger kind of confused me. And I remember I have autism, and so I'm trying to figure out, why does this cause a lot of anger? So anyways, my parents were very strict on modesty, and that made me self-conscious. There was a lot of modesty policing going on. Oh yeah, by the way, I gotta tell you what a modesty police is. A modesty police is a person who enjoys correcting other people and telling other people, hey, your skirt is too short, or your dress is too tight, or your neckline is too low on your shirt, your clothes are too tight, too short, you're showing too much, you shouldn't draw attention to your figure. And these people like to come up to you and correct you and tell you, hey, you need to dress in a certain way so that you don't cause the men and the boys in the church to stumble. So don't draw any attention to yourself. You need to wear long, loose, layered clothes so you don't get attention. That's the modesty police. And I had to deal with the modesty police a few times. Now, my first modesty police, well, it was a relative, and she was really into correcting me. She would buy me clothes and then complain about the clothes that she bought for me. So that was strange and confusing and irritating. And so, but yeah, my Christian community was tough on the woman's body, and they the community tried to make me feel shameful about my body, try to make me feel embarrassed about my body. And there was a time when I was embarrassed about my body, but I quickly, you know, had to push that out of my mind. I had to tell myself, hey, this is nature. What you have is natural. More than half of the human population is female. So I need to fight against the shame that the church is trying to push on me. So that was just something I had to deal with. And I also had to deal with the hypocrisy of the church. At first, the church was teaching us that the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Okay, so that sounds nice and comforting to me back then when I was a Christian, but then the church would turn around and point to us women and say that your body is a stumbling block. So are we the temple of the Holy Spirit, or are we a stumbling block? We can't be both. So that was just some major hypocrisy and some contradiction that was going on back then. So, but the overall message was that the female's body is bad. That was the overall message. And my Christian community tried to make it seem like that it is the woman's responsibility to control a man's thought life. And That's a hard job. Well, no girl should have that job, but that is a big responsibility for any female. So all that did was make females feel conscious about their bodies. And so, yeah, we also had to police ourselves concerning our bodies before we walk outside. We had to, think to ourselves, I'm causing my brother to stumble by what I'm wearing. And we were being fed the lie. We were fed the lie that what a woman wears, that's what's going to protect her. So if a woman is wearing revealing clothing, then she might get raped and she deserves it. That's a lie. But that was what I was taught. If you dress like a whore, you get treated like a whore. That's bad. That is a very bad message. I do not believe that today. And a lot of people do not believe that. A lot of us recognize that as a lie. So, yeah, that was crazy. Some women who do dress modestly have been raped. So that's how I know that it's a lie. For example, Josh Duggar. He was the boy on 19 Kids and Counting. You remember there's a big show of this large family. They had 19 kids. They were very conservative and they believed in modesty, and they made their daughters wear boring, long, loose clothes that cover up their whole body. And so while these girls were dressing very modestly, their stupid oldest brother, who was curious about the woman's body, he would touch them while they were sleeping. And he did other inappropriate things. He touched his youngest sister inappropriately, and now he's in jail because he was a sexual creep. And so his sisters were sexually assaulted, even though they were dressing modestly. So that's a sign that it's a lie to say women who dress modestly don't get sexually assaulted or raped. That's not true. And also a man named Jeff Warren, he was a religious leader over a very strict religious group. And the women in his group, they were Mormons. They were very strict Mormons. And they wore modest dress, covered from like neck down to their ankles. These women were covered. But Jeff Warren, he still raped them. These women were covered and he raped them. He also did inappropriate things to underage girls. He liked to do bad things to 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds. Anyway, Jeff Warren, he went to jail. He went to jail. He was a religious leader. He was surrounded by women who were fully modest. But since he was a creep, he went to jail. So yeah, those long dresses, those long modest dresses, it did not protect those women. So, and Bill Gothard is a religious leader, and he was surrounded by women who dressed modestly. And these were Southern Baptist people, and they were wearing their Southern Baptist modesty clothing, and they were sexually assaulted by Bill Gothard, and they were dressed modestly. So as you can see, it is a lie that modest clothes can stop a woman from being raped. And a woman who dressed revealing, as you can see, this is just all a big lie. It's not about what a woman wears. It's about the predator being a creep. And sometimes a rapist, they act like that because they're on a power trip and they want to have power over someone, and they're just waiting for the opportunity to be alone with their victim. So it's important to not give the creep an opportunity, but the bottom line, it's never the victim's fault, okay? And like I was, when I was a kid, I was taught to believe that it's about the clothing. Your clothing will protect you from rape. Your clothes will not protect you from rape. It's the creeper's fault. The creeper wants to have power over you. He or she is after you. So you get the point. This is all a lie. These are bad ideas. And I'm just happy to get rid of those bad ideas. So, even a man who was a Baptist man who grew up surrounded by women who dressed modestly, he admitted that he had sexual thoughts in his mind, even when the women were dressed up modestly. He said it is possible to lust after a woman. I said after a woman. It's possible to lust after women even when they're fully covered, And that's also a Muslim man who admitted it. He admitted that even when a woman's fully covered, even when her hair is covered, a man can lust after a woman even if she's wearing the hair covering. So at this point, with this knowledge, we can stop blaming women who get raped. Because a long time ago, back in 1994, when a woman got raped, a lot of Christians would say, what was she wearing? What was she wearing? Today, it's not about what she was wearing. It's about the creeper trying to get what he wants, so just really crazy. All right, so my college experience was crazy. So after being homeschooled, at least I was able to go to college. That was good. But I went to a Bible Christian college. And at this Christian college, the leaders were Southern Baptist leaders, and they had rules on what women should wear. And I had to follow a strict dress code that was similar to the Duggars dress code. And it was similar to the dress code that Bill Gothard approved of. So yeah, I'm wearing modest clothes, the rule was your shirt has to be at least 3 fingers from the collarbone. And so as you can see, the shirt I'm wearing now, I wouldn't be able to wear this shirt at a Christian college that I went to. I'm happy I can wear it now. But back then I couldn't even wear this shirt because this shirt would be considered immodest because it's a V-neck shirt, This shirt is modest, but it would have been considered immodest back then. So anyways, at my college, about 3 of the young men there, they admitted that they had sexual urges, and they said that they had sexual thoughts. So the religious leaders told the women leaders about these guys, and they say, okay, these guys are having a problem. These young men are having sexual thoughts, so let's go and yell at the women and tell the women they need to be more modest because it's their responsibility to control the man's thought life. So, and they thought it was a good idea, but when I look back, it was a bad idea. Okay, so I'm a young woman. I'm in college. I'm 20 years old. I wasn't getting any attention because I was socially awkward. I was homeschooled. I was shy. I was quiet. The boys were not giving me any attention back then. And so I didn't like it when I had to go to chapel and I had to listen to a women leader. They separated the boys and the girls. And so I was sitting with a whole bunch of women, and a woman leader, she basically yelled at us for existing as women because the boys in the boys' dorm were struggling. They weren't really boys, they were young men. This is college. This is college. They were young men. Some of them had sexual thoughts, and we were being blamed for it, even though we were dressing modestly. And so the message was make sure your clothes are loose, make sure you're layering yourself, make sure you're wearing your slip, make sure you're not drawing any attention to your body. Don't draw any attention to your body. We have to take care of our brothers in Christ. This is how we take care of our brothers in Christ, by dressing frumpy and by wearing boring clothes. This is what we have to do. And so they taught us that message. And then to make sure that we were following the rules, they said we had to be checked before we leave the dorm. And so here I am, I'm a young woman, I'm getting ready to go to my college classes, but there was a new rule. I had to stop by the dorm leader's room for her to check me. And so this story is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I walk into her room because that was the rule. So I'm in her room and I said, okay, you need to check what I'm wearing because I'm just trying to follow the school rules. And she says, okay. And so she looks at me and she's looking at me really hard. Now, my clothes do match the school standards. I knew what I was getting into when I went to this school. So anyways, I'm modest according to the school standards, but I didn't like how she was looking at me. And she's looking at me really hard. And she stands in front of me. She looks at the front of me. She walks behind me and she looks at me. She stares at the back side of me. She stares at the side part of me. She's looking at me really hard. And she's looking at me in a very judgmental way, even though I'm dressed modestly. I have on my long skirt and my loose shirt, and my shirt was up to here, so what was her problem? So I'm looking at her, and I just feel something dark inside of me. Anger. I feel angry. So I'm looking back at her, and I'm giving her this mean look. This mean look. Like she could tell. I wanted her to know that I was angry at her for looking at me so hard, and I'm giving her fire eyes. Until she finally apologized. Oh, I'm sorry for looking at you like that. I just had to check. But yes, I'm sorry for looking at you that way. And I'm like, okay. And I walk out of her room and I'm thinking, this is weird. My Christianity is weird. It was just a weird thing. Now, that was a part of modesty culture. Now, I'm going to tell you a little stupid story about me dealing with purity culture. So when I was engaged to get married, I was 25 years old. I was almost 26. Now that's a grown up. That's a full grown up. I was not a teenager. And a religious leader, it was a woman, she wanted to know that, she asked me, okay, so when he put the ring on your finger, did you guys kiss when he put the ring on your finger? And I said, yes, we kissed, yeah. And she got angry and she yelled at me and we were sitting in a car and she was the driver and I was the passenger. And she just started yelling at me and I'm sitting there like, and she said, God is not going to bless your marriage because you kissed your fiance. And I'm like thinking to myself, that's not biblical. And she's being a hypocrite because she kissed before she was married. But she's telling me God's not going to bless my marriage because I kissed my fiance. I knew that there was a big problem with my form of Christianity. This was legalism. It's not even in the Bible. The Bible doesn't say that God won't bless your marriage just because you kissed before your wedding. It was weird. And then she pointed to Josh Duggar and she said he saved his first kiss for marriage. Why couldn't you save your first kiss for marriage? And I replied to her, I told her, well, Joshua Duggar has different problems in his life. Now, this happened back in 2010. So she didn't know that Joshua Duggar was, she didn't know that he had sexual problems. She did not know that he was a crazy sexual creep, So that came out later. So when that came out, I realized that it's not good to put anybody on a pedestal, So that was just really a crazy experience. I was an adult, and another adult woman pastor is yelling at me for kissing my fiance before we got married and saying that God's not going to bless my marriage. That was not even in the Bible. That was legalism. And I didn't know it at that time, but I was inside of a Christian cult. I was inside of a cult, and I needed to get out of it. So that was a crazy experience. So, but other people had crazier experiences than I did. So, but I have one more silly story to tell. I did my student teacher work. This is back when I was 25 and I was working as a teacher, doing my student teaching. And I was at a Lutheran private Christian school. And I'm dressing modestly, working at a school. I know how to dress at this point, 25 years old, born into, Christianity. So I'm going to know how they want me to dress. So I'm doing everything right. But the dean of students, he was this big old man. He was this big, gigantic, big, heavy set man. And he just felt like he just felt like picking on me. So I'm dressed correctly, but he had a problem with my earrings. Okay, so I was wearing large hoop earrings. These were big earrings. I was not wearing these earrings, but I was wearing large hoop earrings, big circle, gold circle earrings. And he said, okay, you shouldn't wear those earrings because it's a bad example for the girls. And so back then I was a people's pleaser and I just wanted to make everybody happy. And it was weird that this man was talking to me about my earrings. So he wanted me to take them off, and me being the obedient Christian that I was, I took them off and I was like, okay. Now, I'm mad at myself for being so obedient back then because number one, I was a full grown woman. And number two, it was not his place to correct me on my earrings. And so, anyways, a few years later, he went to jail for raping underage girls. You see? So that's one of the reasons why I have a problem with the modesty police. A person who is overly excited to correct you on what you're wearing, that person may have sexual problems of their own. That's why I do not like modesty police. I really do not. So, yeah, other people had worse problems. I had a friend named Tammy, and she wore, regular American clothes. I went to a different church when I was done with college, and I had a friend, and she was wearing regular clothes. And at this particular church, we could wear regular American clothing, regular American standard clothing. And her clothes fit her. They fit her correctly. They were form-fitting. And she was in her early 20s, and she worked out, and she was in shape. She was in good shape. She was fit. But some of the church leaders and church members had a problem with it because she had a nice body. She was not dressing like a streetwalker. She did not look like a prostitute. She was wearing normal clothes. And while she was wearing normal clothes, anybody could see that she was in shape. And some people had a problem with that. And so I was at a church meeting, and somebody brought up the fact that she was sent home. She was in the praise and worship team. She was one of the singers, and one of the church leaders sent her home to change because that person wanted her to wear a baggier shirt, a bigger shirt, and baggier pants. And so since that church leader was uncomfortable with her wearing regular clothes, that church leader wanted her to wear bigger clothes. And she was sent home, and she was embarrassed by that. And she didn't really let it get to her, but that's one of the things that I had to deal with when I was dealing with church issues. Putting shame on women, making women feel like it's a shame for them to have a nice body. And so that was ridiculous. And I heard this crazy story about a teenager who went to youth group, and it was hot outside, and so she was wearing flip-flops, and she did not know that the youth group leader had a foot fetish. So she's wearing her flip-flops, and her toenails are polished, and she's wearing a long skirt, and she's wearing a modest t-shirt. And when the youth group leader was done preaching his message to the youth, he said to her, "Come here, I want to talk to you afterwards." So she was there, and her two friends were waiting for her, and her two friends were watching this whole exchange. And so he told this young 17-year-old girl, he said, "Hey, you're wearing flip-flops, and you should not show your feet because it's a stumbling block and it's a temptation for me. Now that's crazy. That is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, he had a foot fetish, but that's not her problem. It was summer and she was wearing flip-flops. He was telling her not to wear flip-flops. So anyways, this teenager girl, she was smart and she leaves out. She leaves out with her middle finger up. Her two friends, they were like, yeah, that youth group leader, he was wrong. He was crazy and we're not going to go back to that church anymore. Right, yeah. So that's a really crazy story. And then a different young woman, she was on YouTube, and this was a few years ago, but she shared her story. She was in youth group when she was 18 years old. Okay, so she's a young adult, and she's dressed modestly. It's just that she was wearing red lipstick. What's wrong with red lipstick? So the youth group leader, he preached his sermon, and when he was done preaching his sermon and when people were beginning to leave, he singled her out and he said, hey, I got to talk to you. And he said, while I was preaching, I was distracted by your red lipstick. So could you please not wear red lipstick anymore? Don't wear that red lipstick anymore. And she was like, okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to be a bad person. I'm sorry. But then when she got older, she realized that that was ridiculous. He was just being controlling. There's nothing wrong with wearing red lipstick. So he was just on a power trip. He just wanted to control a female. So that was really silly. There was this woman, full-grown woman. She was a mother. And she had 5 teenager boys, and her 5 teenager boys, they went to youth group. Now, I got this story from YouTube, okay? And she was on Tim Mills' YouTube channel, and she told this story that her 5 teenager boys were handed a checklist, and the youth group leader told her teenager boys that when a woman dressed inappropriately, here are things that she should not wear. She should not wear sleeveless shirts. She should not wear spaghetti straps. A woman should not wear clothes that are too tight, too revealing. Her skirt shouldn't be short. Her dress shouldn't be short. The list went on and on and on and on what a woman should not be wearing. So these teenager boys became preoccupied with flesh. So this woman, she had to go to the grocery store, and her teenager boys were with her. And so her teenager boys, they saw a woman. It was summertime, and this woman was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And the teenager boys said, oh, our youth group leader will not approve of what that woman is wearing. Quick, pull out the checklist, and let's look at the checklist and complain about what this woman is wearing. And then the mother, she realized that her sons were acting like the modesty police. So she yelled at her boys and she said, stop it. She said, stop. Stop policing women. Okay, stop policing women. This is not the right thing to do. Okay, what's in the inside is more important. A woman's character is more important. Stop trying to control women. Stop it. And then she realized that she needed to pull her boys out of youth group because the youth group leader was making her boys become preoccupied with flesh. So this was a smart mom. She did the right thing to pull her sons out of youth group. Now, there was another woman. Her story was worse than my story. In her household, her mom was okay with her dad and her brother checking her before she left the house. So before she left the house, her dad had to check and see if what she was wearing wouldn't cause men to stumble, because her parents believed that it was her responsibility to control men's thoughts. So before she walked out the door, her mom said, okay, get your dad. Make sure your dad look at you. and see what you're wearing before you walk out the door. So her dad will look at her and say, okay, yeah, you're okay. You're good to go. You can go outside. Yeah, you're not going to cause boys to stumble. You can go outside. And if her dad wasn't at the house, her mom would get her brother to check on her. And her brother will look at her and say, yeah, okay, you're good to go. And so this went on until she was like 19 years old. This is crazy. She couldn't leave the house until her brother or her dad checked on her. And so this was kind of messing with her self-image. It was kind of messing with her mind. So when she finally got her own house, and when she was not living with her family, and when she was living by herself, it was hard for her to get rid of the habit of having somebody check her. So she had to check herself and say, okay, I need to get my mail out of the mailbox, but am I dressed right? Am I going to cause a man to stumble by what I'm wearing? And she will always check herself. And so finally, she got a good friend who said, look, you can wear what you want to wear, and you can walk out of your house without a checklist, without somebody checking you. It's okay. Just walk out of the house and wear what you want to wear. You are an adult now. And so she had to get used to that. And so I'm sorry that this woman went through all that. But here is the grand finale of crazy church stories about shaming girls and young women about their bodies. There was a YouTuber. She wrote a book. I forgot her name, but I remember the name of her book. Her book is called The Great Sex Rescue. That's the title of her book. And she tells a story. She tells her 11-year-old daughter's story. And so the 11-year-old girl, she was in Sunday school, and her 11-year-old daughter thought she was having a normal day. And so when the Sunday school teacher, it was a man Sunday school teacher for 5th graders. Now we're talking about 5th graders, okay? The man Sunday school teacher tells the girl, hey, I need to talk to you. So class was over. Everybody else walked out of the classroom. The girl is alone with her Sunday school teacher. It is a man Sunday school teacher. And the man Sunday school teacher says to the girl who's 11 years old, he say to her, look, you're starting to develop. And since you're starting to develop, you should not wear a V-neck shirt. Okay, so she's wearing a V-neck shirt. I'm wearing a V-neck shirt. The 11-year-old girl is wearing a V-neck shirt, and the Sunday school teacher is telling her not to wear it. He says, don't wear it, because if you keep wearing a V-neck shirt, the man at the church will look at you, and they will lust after you, and you will be a stumbling block. So if you don't want man to sin, you have to not wear a V-neck shirt. That's what he told the 11-year-old. Now, the 11-year-old girl, she felt embarrassed. She felt shame. She felt like not going to church again. And that 11-year-old girl cried because a man Sunday school teacher who was not related to her made her feel bad about growing up and developing into a woman. She was 11 years old. She was not fully developed. She did not have big boobs. She did not have cleavage. She was not showing any cleavage. She was just wearing a V-neck shirt. And she was not the stumbling block. Who's the stumbling block in this story? The little 11-year-old girl who went to Sunday school, or the creepy Sunday school teacher? Who's the stumbling block? The Sunday school teacher is. You know the answer to that. We know the answer to that. And we all know at this point that if a grown man looks at a girl, an underage girl who is not fully developed, if he looks at that girl to lust after her, then he is a pedophile. He is a pedophile. Only a pedophile will look at an underage girl to lust after her. So yeah, the modesty police people, they have something to do with church attendance dropping. So when I got out of Christianity, I had to tell myself over and over again, there's nothing wrong with your body. There's nothing wrong with women having body. There's nothing wrong with the female form. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, I had to get that into my head when I left Christianity. And even when I was in Christianity, I knew that something was wrong. There was something wrong with the hyper focus of the woman's body. So I'm just very glad to get out of that. So since then, I have distanced myself from the modesty culture. I had to get out of that. And today I wear what I want to wear, and I wear whatever earrings I want to wear. Nobody's allowed to criticize me for what I wear. Nobody's allowed to criticize me for the earrings that I wear. Yeah, today I'm wearing the Pride earrings, and nobody should criticize me for wearing these earrings. All right? Okay, so anyways, but yeah, this is one of the reasons why people leave church. This is one of the reasons. There's many reasons why people leave church, but this is one of the reasons. People don't like the church's view on sex. People don't like the church's view on the woman's body. And modesty culture and purity culture is also bad for men. Yes, women are usually picked on, but this culture is bad for men too. Men are taught that in this particular religion, the men were taught that women exist to meet the man's needs. It is the woman's job to fix the marriage, and just this hyper focus on the woman's body. And the men will have this problem thinking this way because the woman was taught, you know, if she was born into this religion, she was taught that she should not draw attention to her body. But when she gets married, she's not going to want her husband to look at her because she was taught that men should not look at her. Then she gets married, she don't want her husband to look at her because of this habit, this big habit of making sure that you're protecting your brothers in Christ. And then she gets married, and then she's supposed to show everything to him. That's called the magic switch. And the magic switch doesn't work. That's why we call it the magic switch. Now, I did not have this problem because by the time I got married, I was feeling rebellious against the Christian view on sexuality. So when I got married, I had no problem doing what I needed to do in my marriage because I was angry at the church at that time. So yeah, being rebellious against that was very helpful to me. But for the most part, I have had you guys long enough. This video is getting kind of long, so I know I have to end. So I would like to hear your comments on this. And I'm just glad that I'm able to point out what was wrong with some of the bad things that I was taught. And I do believe the older generation deserves much more. They deserve better. And so, yes, I have a daughter. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I'm not shaming her. I'm not going to make her feel bad about being a female. And I'm not going to make her feel bad. When she's fully grown, I'm just going to make her feel as normal as possible. There's no need to make girls, and there's no need to make women, there's no need to make them feel bad about having a woman's body. And so, really sad that that happened to a lot of people within my age group. But I'm glad that a lot of us know better, and we're going to do better, and we're going to help the younger generation to not feel shameful about themselves. So I had you long enough. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you leave a comment in the comments section. And I'd love to talk to you later. Goodbye.